throughout. What happens is for a bill to become a law, you have to pass it from the assembly, then the Senate, and then the governor has to sign it. And politics got involved, but then also archaic views on who should be considered a rape victim and who should be considered a rapist that also played in a part into this for a very long time. One of our biggest detractors was the District Attorneys Association, and I'm proud to say that now they actually support the bill and they withdrew their concerns and became our allies in actually making sure
What changed with that,
that I think
Assemblymember Cruz?
I think one of the things that changed is their concern. It took a while for them to truly understand that the language was not going to deter who how these survivors could get justice. And frankly, their leadership changed. The District Attorneys Association had different leadership back when Aravella was the sponsor. And a lot of things came together. We made some slight amendments to provide even more clarity in the language as to who could be charged and when they could be charged, and that it was not retroactive. And it provided everyone the tools that we felt are needed to get people justice.
Some people who had supported the idea in theory worried it could prevent consecutive sentencing if there were multiple violations during the course of a single attack, that they would all be defined as a single rape and therefore treated less severely. There were also concerns that a jury might be less likely to convict on a rape charge than a charge of sexual assault. Representative Cruz, how were you able to address those concerns?
It was one of the arguments that would come up constantly on debate over the last 11 years. And we would always address it with what's clear. If you have a district attorney that pleads the case exactly how they're supposed to, as separate charges, as separate incidents, and frankly, because we already had case law that supported our view in saying that that their notion that we couldn't get separate convictions for separate acts and separate sentencing, and that it would in fact get somehow muddled in the mind of the jury was wrong. And I gave our juries and New Yorkers who would be on them a lot more credit than to think that if we presented them with the facts the way that they happened, pled the case the way that the courts require us to plead them, that we would get the convictions that survivors deserved.
Lydia, I'm curious, would you tell us how this struggle has affected you in the 13 years since the attack?
Sure. I think, obviously in the beginning I was 25, which is a lot different than where I am now in life. And I think I hadn't fully processed what this was going to look like long term for me at that point in my life. And I think the further away from it I get, the more clarity I'm able to have. Although I do think it's something I will never fully have, full closure on, for lack of a better word. But I do think there were definitely times when this felt really like a uphill battle that was not going to get done. And I think it can just be incredibly disheartening to be like, this thing seems so clear cut and so normal. And yet I'm still having these conversations with people saying like, do you really think oral is that bad? And, and I really think it really dulls your flame a little bit at some point and makes you feel like, I'm not sure I can keep going. I am very fortunate to have had such an amazing support system to get this. And I think keep saying like, no, this is really important. And when Catalina came on, knowing like we're going to continue to get this across the finish line, definitely profoundly impacting in ways I don't think you can completely describe. And I think it's different for every survivor. It still feels a little feel that we're finally here and over it.
Yeah, Lydia, I was going to ask you that. Just a few seconds left here. Tell us what you think now that the law has been changed, finally.
Come again?
I said, tell us what you think now that the law has
thrilled.
changed.
I'm thrilled. I think this means so much for so many people, for people who, now not just women can be tried. I think there's a lot of reasoning this is great, and I'm really excited. I'd, love to see it pass on in other states. and continue to have this impact it does for survivors as we're able to change this language.
Assemblymember Cruz and Lydia Cuomo, thank you both for joining us on such a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
WNYC is supported by Big World Pictures, presenting actor Franz Rogowski in Disco Boy. Starts this Friday at the Quad Cinema in Manhattan, with guests from the film in person for Q&As at select opening weekend shows.
Verdicts on financial aid are being delayed into next month for millions of college applicants.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Fidelity. A dedicated advisor can help create a wealth plan for a full financial picture. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
I'm David Brancaccio. Students and parents waiting to hear if they can pay for college have run into a new frustrating hurdle. Many will have to wait longer until March to get the calculation on financial aid. The Department of Education needs extra time to fix an inflation calculation error in the new financial aid application, the FAFSA. As Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes reports, the delay is stressing out everyone involved in getting people into college.
In a normal year, prospective college students would already be getting some financial aid offers from schools. But without the FAFSA data, schools can't calculate those offers. Jennifer Jesse is a college admissions consultant in the D.C. area.
The offer letter tells the truth for the first time.
The truth about what the actual price tag for each college will be. And the most recent delay means counselors will have at least a month less than they expected to go over what's a loan, what's a grant, what's a scholarship.
Money comes in a lot of different form from colleges that can be difficult to understand at 17.
Alex Rigney is a college counselor at a technology magnet high school in New York City. He says the FAFSA delays may prompt some students to decide not to go to college at all this year.
It's a delicate dance to begin with, so I think any additional barriers is only going to make that more challenging.
Some professional associations of higher ed officials are calling for colleges to extend their enrollment deadlines. That would give schools more time to send those financial aid offers and students more time to digest them. I'm Stephanie Hughes for Marketplace.
No surprise, but the Federal Reserve left interest rates alone at the conclusion of their meetings yesterday. If data show inflation staying under control between now and the next meetings, March 19th and 20th, policymakers might start lowering interest rates then, but Jerome Powell, Fed chair, was not encouraging on this point.
I don't think it's likely that the committee will reach a level of confidence by the time of the March meeting to identify March as the time to do that. But that's to be seen.
The benchmark 10-year interest rate, which had been above 4% for more than 2 weeks, is down at 3.94% now. Stocks S&P futures are up 0.4%. NASDAQ futures are up 0.6%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by C3 Generative AI. Verified traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. Learn more at c3.ai. And by the podcast Ripple, a new investigative podcast from Western Sound and APM Studios. Listen now to Ripple.
On this first day of Black History Month, let's hear about a powerful but not widely known figure in the civil rights movement. Special correspondent Lee Hawkins has this profile of a man who worked behind the scenes with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so many others on the economic side of the movement.
Behind every great leader, there are often unsung heroes. In this case, Black American entrepreneur Arthur George Gaston, also known as A.G. Gaston. He mostly shunned the spotlight and wasn't one to march or deliver speeches at rallies, but the Alabama native and grandson of slaves wrote plenty of checks. While King was a social activist, A.G. Gaston was an economic activist. He spent more than 70 years investing millions of dollars into the civil rights movement and Black America.
Find a need and fill it.
His granddaughter, Rochelle Gaston Malone, says his business strategy was rooted in the fact that Jim Crow-era businesses, just about every sector, used segregationist practices and policies that didn't accommodate blacks or weren't fair or equitable. A.G. Gaston capitalized on the opportunity to form businesses that treated blacks with the dignity they deserved, combining altruism with capitalism, guided by another simple mantra.
A part of all you earn is yours to keep. My grandfather truly understood that it was important for us as African Americans to earn a living for our families.
He built a diversified company in Birmingham that included insurance, real estate, a motel, and construction, among other divisions. In 1957, he founded the Citizens Federal Savings and Loan Association, the first black-owned bank in Birmingham. He used his profits and his business acumen to quietly promote social justice.
He wasn't on the forefront, marching or on the front lines in that capacity. But he understood that there needed to be someone who could serve as a liaison between those powers that be who made the decisions as to help provide the outcomes that we as African American people were searching to receive through the marches and through all of the demonstrations.
But even as he created jobs, provided accommodations, and made insurance-generated wealth within reach for generations of black American families, he was criticized by some in the black community who believed he was too close to people in the white power structure and took the fact that he was never at marches preaching through a bullhorn to mean he wasn't committed to the movement. Some also criticized him for bailing protesters out of jail, thinking it undermined their efforts. Reverend Joseph Lowry, a longtime civil rights activist with King and president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, defended Gaston, saying, quote, "Everyone has a role to play. His role was a supportive role. Some people have to beat the drum while others marched." A.G. Gaston died in 1996 at 103 years old. For Rochelle Gaston Malone, the ultimate way to honor her grandfather would be to immortalize his name in the district that housed some of the businesses, churches, and community buildings that relied on Gaston for early funding. His family has been working to get a street named after him, and also a park that sits amongst the financial hub Gaston created. A legacy for the man who planted the trees of black economic success in Birmingham. I'm Lee Hawkins for Marketplace.
Lee Hawkins has a podcast in development for our APM Studios branch called What Happened in Alabama. It launches in May and is based on his forthcoming book, Nobody's Slave, How Uncovering My Family's History Set Me Free. I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. We're from APM, American Public Media.